And we are live. Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. We are joined today by Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. And we are here with the Embroidery Nerd. And from what I understand, we have a Digitizing 911 today.
Yes, we do.
Ooh. The suspense is killing. I haven't actually seen it yet. So Justin is going to get heckled a little bit from the crowd.
Yes.
That's me over here. But before we start heckling Justin, we'll go ahead and check in with our wonderful audience. We have Miss Cindy King joining us. Hello. Jesse Gibson checking in as well. Boo, boo, boo. We have Promethean Promotions. Howdy from Houston. Happy to have you here. We have Doug joining us as well. Whoa. I'm going to get it somewhere. From Los Angeles. So we get to see Doug every year at the Impressions Expo. I'm looking forward to that here coming up.
Yes, I know, Doug. I'm in the same boat as you, missing the Dodger game here for this. This is how dedicated I am to you guys.
This is See, I don't watch baseball. So if somebody told me it was a baseball national holiday, I probably would have said, you know what, let's
see Doug could be sitting at home watching us here and have his TV on. So if I had the game on over here on my other monitor, I'd probably be glued to that and not paying attention to Jeff. So
well, there you go. I wouldn't pay attention to Jeff either. All right. So Justin, without further ado, why don't you show us what we're working with today?
Sure thing. Let me add this to the screen here, and let's see if I get this right this time. No, I do not.
I got you.
There we go. All right. So, a lot of times you may get design files from.
Hold on, Justin. Back to baseball.
Yes.
We've got hello from Gilbert, Arizona. Hello, Chris. Thanks for joining us. And Doug wants to know who you're rooting for.
The Dodgers, Doug. Who else?
Who are they playing?
They are playing the Milwaukee Brewers in the playoffs.
Oh, okay.
Yes. They won a nail biter last night.
All right.
Dodgers did. Anywho, so a lot of times you may get files that are supplied from customers. They've paid the setup somewhere else, and they either moved or had a falling out with that embroiderer, whatever the situation is. They have the file one way or another. And a lot of times they may not know how it was set up in the first place, if it was only used on flats, if it's good for hats. But, especially when you're a company that does contract work, this happens a lot because those customers like to control, a lot of those middlemen like to control their own digitizing. So they may be getting it from their digitizer that's current or files that have been floating around. So this was actually a case of one of my customers, contract customers, brought in a file. This particular salesperson was kind of new to the industry, and she was told, "Oh, I have the digitizing, so everything's great and glorious, and I don't have to pay a setup." But taking a look at it, not to say that the whole thing is completely bad or is digitized wrong, but the order that she brought in was for hats. And just kind of taking a quick look at the design, I could tell that I needed to do some revisions to make sure that it's gonna give me the best possible outcome when it comes on hat. So
you needed to do something. Likely, it was not digitized for a hat.
Right. So here's the file. As you can see, it's in some kind of weird colors because it is following my standard thread palette that I have here in Wilcom. And it is a DST file, so it's not going to hold any thread information as far as thread colors and whatnot. So that's one lesson that's learned when someone brings in a file. You got to make sure you're asking for, if you are getting a DST file, you have to ask for the thread breakdown or the color breakdown as far as what elements or what color, because the file itself is not going to tell you. All it's going to tell you is where there's color changes.
Yeah.
So if I do a quick redraw. So right off the bat, I can see that the fill here is, for whatever reason, it has an endpoint that's in the middle of the fill and not at the end of the fill. So this particular fill was digitized where there was a split in it. So right off the bat, I know it's going to probably have some issues where it can possibly pucker a hat. So that's one thing that I'm seeing right off the bat that I'm going to want to.
So, Justin, roughly how tall was this design?
This is just about at 2.5 inches tall. So I didn't mess with the height because on machines I use, 2.5 inches tall does work, especially with the particular hats that were on this design.
But at 2.5 inches that high on the crown, you're likely going to get a pucker when that comes back.
Exactly. So yeah, anytime that a fill's kind of broken up where it goes one direction, stops, comes back down, you're the material that's in between those two fills, since this is pushing out and this is pushing down, there's a good chance that the hat in these areas are going to pucker because it's really pulling on that hat downwards, when this already established kind of some stability with it pushing upwards like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing I see is it's doing the fill of the banner. So one thing, I'll pause this really quick. One thing I do tend to do on hats is if there's any areas that are filled with borders, I want to sew those borders as close as possible in sequence to the fill, because of registration on a hat. You're working on a curved surface, so you're wanting to kind of things that are really important that need to line up, especially satin borders on fills to make sure that there's not too much movement on that hat or too much movement on when it's sewing. You really want to get that border down as soon as possible. I know there's certain situations where other elements may need to, for whatever reason, sew first. But I did notice that the borders on those fills weren't sewing right away. So that's just something I usually do when I look at these files. I kind of take note, sew sequences and sew directions, angles. So again, it's doing the inside elements here. It's kind of avoiding that outer border. So that's something that I'm thinking that I may need to address here. So
So I'm going to grab a couple of comments here while we're watching that slow draw, Justin.
yeah.
DJ Kev asks, quick question, what is the smallest satin size that works for 3D puff? I don't like to go below 3 millimeters. I mean, you can, but it's tough.
I push it at 2 if I absolutely have to, but I tend to try to do 3 millimeters at all cost.
Yeah. I mean, I like to stick to 4, but I'll go down to 3.
Right.
And I can go down smaller. It's just, as you do that, it becomes a lot more difficult to work
It
with.
will work. It's just, are you going to want the headache of it? Are you going to want the problems that it brings with it? Trying to
You
throw
need a really stiff foam for it to actually stand up.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
All right, and then this one is by Doug, Universal Underlay. So I would throw a global underlay on this.
absolutely. And this is a job that I did the revisions already. We ran the jobs and it came out, really good. But I'll definitely go through and kind of show you the things that
Oh,
that
now we're just going to go into a puff class here, Justin. I'm okay with that. What about when the satins goes from, say, 3 millimeters to a point? I would say that depends on the point and how fast it tapers. Because if it tapers abruptly, then you can kind of put a diamond shaped cap on there.
mm-hmm.
If it goes to a smaller point, the biggest problem that I run into when you start going really narrow, like long and narrow, is that any way you try to add a couple extra needle penetrations, those they pop up on the outside of that satin.
Right.
You
The
can
way I
come
approach it is one main thing is make sure you do not end at the thin part of the point,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want your lock stitches, because you're just gonna have a big old bulge at the end. So if you do have to come to a point, travel to the end of that point, kind of use that last stitch of your travel, running stitch as your kind of your one stitch cut at the end of the point. Don't make that point too tight either. I usually do it where I leave it about a millimeter, thickness, because all that thread and everything that's coinciding in there is going to cut your foam.
Yeah.
And once you travel out, you travel from that smallest point and make sure you stop at the ending, the thicker part of your taper.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, I'm going to bring up Cindy King's comment here. She goes, Jeff, I just got some of the dense foam that Trey was using on your cap design at Dallas. I did a test, really nice. So that stuff, the quality of your foam is going to matter a lot on that. The
Mm-hmm.
stuff that Cindy's talking about is extremely dense foam.
Right.
It's some of, if not the densest foam I've held. Um, and that, if you want those nice squared off corners or you're going into finer points, denser foam helps it all stay and look like it should. Softer foam tends to get sucked down and pulled down in when you start getting that narrow.
Yeah, exactly. If you're using a really soft foam and you're getting that narrow into a point, it's just it's basically gonna flatten. So you're gonna lose your 3D effect in those points.
Unless that's what you're going for. I
Right.
mean, there are times I've been going for it, right? Trying to blend down to a flat.
Right.
So,
Is that foam that SPSI was using?
yeah, I believe SPSI is carrying it. Rick Parsley asked whose foam is that. I believe SPSI is carrying it. That's the booth that was down there sewing it. So that's that's the stuff they had at their booth, and I believe that they're carrying it.
Gotcha. All right. So back to this design. Um, so yeah, we were coming through here. This design looks like it's doing pretty much all the interior um, elements before even going back to that border, and I see why, because they were using that outer edge right here to hide, and going across the top of this banner to hide the travel stitches between the two football players. Um, I get trying to keep your needle down and avoiding trims, but when it comes to hats are concerned, I think registration is a lot more important than having just a single trim in there between the two football players. So I would definitely lean towards getting things done in sequence where the registration is going to be a lot tighter than avoiding that one trim. So
Yeah, I'm surprised it's doing the text before it does the outline.
yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of the sequencing was the main part. So yeah, go through and kind of looking at the main points that I knew I was gonna have to change. Overall, if you've ever heard me or Jeff in these, anytime we're talking digitizing on hats, global underlay, I preach it all the time. The fill start and stop where it's kind of meeting the meeting here. You want to definitely keep that fill, especially when it's a shape that can just can continue all in one direction. We're not going to split that up. Again, sequence where it's kind of going through, doing all the interior detail before it gets to that outer border, and then even last that border of the banner, text, small text inside, and then the top text. So this is my final design that I ended up doing once it was done.
Look, it's not in the same colors.
It's not in the same colors. Because why? Because I saved it as an AMB file, and I knew the colors that I was going to be applying to this design, and so I changed my
Red
color
palette.
library. Yeah, my color palette down here to the actual Madeira threads that are here. Uh,
Now,
saved.
I have a personal question here for you,
Yes.
Justin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you set up a color? Do you set up colorways that you keep consistent, or do you just set up the threads as you go into each design?
Uh, as far as like different palettes,
Mm-hmm.
I've been meaning to do that and I haven't. I kind of know the threads that we use offhand, and it's easy enough for me just to kind of go in here and search by number just because I know the numbers offhand. So um, it's pretty quick that way, and that way I can just grab a needle, think of a color that I want, yellow, and assign it just like that.
Okay. I was just curious.
All right.
I don't use the colorway feature like I should either, but
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful things that the colorway thing option does in Wacom that I don't utilize. I do utilize like different actual color sequences of the same logo. Adding another palette or another colorway for the same logo. That is definitely a nice feature to so you can kind of take a look at, like if you do something on lights and darks and say like this is on navy, you're going to do the border a different color to make sure that it's not tone on tone, something like that. So
And then when you send that EMB file, that colorway information comes right with it. So if you set
um
up two different color palettes,
to
that
the
those color palettes carry along with the EMB
to
file, correct?
to the machine.
No, to whoever you send it to. So like if you
Oh
send
yes,
that EMB file, then I would
yes,
have
absolutely,
color.
absolutely. That's definitely saved and it's embedded within the AMB file, so that's something information. Now you do lose that again if you are outputting it to the majority of machine files. There are a few that do keep color information. I believe a ZSK file and a PES file are two that retain color information. Um,
There is a Tajima format that does, but I believe it only works with the newer machines.
oh, okay.
And then I believe Barrett. I'm not sure on Barrett. I don't have one, and I've not ran one, so that I can't speak to that. But
The Barradin is the one machine that the customers that I have that run Barradins, they swear by them, especially when it comes to hats. They are definitely a workhorse when it comes to hats, but that's one that I've never actually been on and experienced is a Barradin. I wish I have. I've been pretty much on all the other major brands one way or another. Um, but yeah, Barradins are the only ones that I haven't actually got my
had hands-on experience with.
yeah. All right, so let's do a quick redraw
So
and just kind of go over the things that they adjusted, and then I kind of
Jesse answered your question. Barrett does carry the uh, color information,
oh, it does.
and then Jalasco, Mexico. Welcome.
Jalisco.
Thank you, Justin, for correcting me. Welcome.
All right,
Okay.
global underlay. There you go, Doug.
Step one.
Step
Yep.
one, I added the global underlay, and if you notice here, I typically do global underlays manually, and that's when I'm using a running stitch with a little bit longer running stitch length to not hammer the amount of stitches that are going on your hat and to save time. But if you notice my starting point, let's see here.
Is in the file.
My starting point is off your center. Center of this hat is right here. So I always start off the center so it does not fall right on that seam, because you do not want to start your lock stitches or your tie-in stitches right on the seam, especially when you have those dreaded hats that end in a 2 that everybody complains about. But yeah,
I mean, it's a decent practice to start off seam.
yeah,
I've
off
seen
theme. Just avoid. You never know what hats these might be going on in the future, but it's not going to hurt if it is a hat that doesn't have a seam, or if it's a 5-panel hat. Even it's not going to hurt just starting just off center to the left or right.
Yep.
So unhide all. Okay, so added my global underlay here. And if you can see that the bottom fill is definitely going from bottom to top. And
Mm-hmm.
I immediately went to the outline on that bottom fill. So I'm not traveling away from that bottom fill at all. As soon as it stops, I added that border. Now, it is a little bit different than the actual original, because the original does have a, a different color per se in it, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not saying that the color of the thread is not the same. It's just in a different color sequence, so it shows as a different color in the DST file. But
Now, did you by chance get an image of this? Because typically, when somebody brings me something like that, I get an image with it.
yes, so what they ended up doing, they actually sent me the spec sheet from the original digitizer, and it had a list of colors that they had chosen in that particular software. that did give a list of colors. So I was able to visually see that the outer border is the same color as the inner fill. So again, changing that sequence, not only it saves you a color change, but it's going to save you in registration where that fill ends, and you're going to go ahead and proceed with that satin border right away. Not only that, if you can kind of notice here, I did beef up those borders because these borders were tending to be a bit too thin. So there was a good chance that those are going to come out, kind of sewing kind of weak as far as how bold they were. So,
And you do lose, like, it's amazing. If you run a design on a flat and you run it on a hat, you can actually measure, you lose distance when you sew it on a hat.
oh yeah,
And I don't know if it's just because of the shape of the hat itself.
uh-huh.
Actually, I think it is the shape of the hat itself, most of it, but you do tend to lose a little bit of distance. So beefing up satins, especially when they're narrow on hats, that's a large reason why.
Exactly. So again, I fixed that problem where the fill stopped right around here in this area where it went to the top and came back down. So I went ahead and made that fill just complete one fill going one direction, not breaking up. And again, the border, as soon as it ends, I'm adding that border. Now, if you did watch
Okay, Justin, I'm going to stop you. Hold on.
yeah.
So, off center start is smart. I haven't thought of that. Feel stupid for asking what might well known in the group, but why global underlay? This is not a stupid question. And we're definitely going to make sure that Justin's going to explain it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have any questions, we all started somewhere. So there was a time when I didn't know what it was either.
Yeah, absolutely. No stupid questions at all. So global underlay is going to do a couple things. One, it's going to in global underlay are going to be done on designs that are heavier in stitch count, have a larger sew area where you have a surface that's going to be under the top stitches. They're not going to be visible when you have your finished product. So something like text, thin text, you're not going to do global underlay because to try to keep it within the variable of the width of those satins of the text, you're not going to want to do that much global underlay and try to come back and hope that that text is covering every piece of that global underlay. These are for designs that are heavy in stitch count and or have a large filled area that you're trying to stabilize your hat. So it's going to attach that stabilizer to your hat to make sure that there's no shifting at all. So it's kind of stabilizing that surface. It is also creating bottom up, center out, no matter how your design ends up sewing. Because as much as you try to do bottom up, center out, sometimes the type of stitch or the way it's shaped is just not going to allow you to do that every single time within the elements of the design. So if you start your hat at the bottom up, center out with the global underlay, you've kind of already established where you're creating that surface where it's going to be pushed to the point where it's stabilized. There shouldn't be any shifting after that. So anything that sews on top of that now, you're not going to worry about those puckers or anything like that in the hat because it's already stabilized with the global underlay.
So I will add to this that this is also a trick that is used when you have like two intersecting fills. A lot of times, sometimes just trying to butt up two fills next to each other, they'll separate. You can throw a little bit of global underlay across where that seam is. That'll help them stay together.
Right.
It's a trick that you can use in a lot of different scenarios. And I have, so it doesn't just work on caps, but primarily, like Justin said, it works great on caps, especially when the sew sequence is not necessarily center up, bottom out.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Hold on, Justin.
Yeah.
So we got a follow-up question during the explanation. Just so you guys know, there is a couple seconds delay between when you guys type it and we actually see it. So he goes, okay, that makes sense. So mostly fill stitch area. Hadn't even thought of the hat bottom up and out. That's very smart. Always vertical lines or just this design?
So even without global underlay, you definitely want to do hats, even like if it's just like say 2 or 3 lines of text. You want to start with your center bottom lettering, work
I
your
think
way
he
out.
means the direction of the
Right.
global
I
underlay.
just he was just
Oh,
saying
okay.
it's kind of a I read it as kind of a two-part question.
Oh, okay.
Center out, yeah, definitely you want to start center out, bottom up. The As far as the global underlay itself, because you're trying to again run from bottom up and center out. That's where you are kind of going vertical lines because you're trying to use that pattern of bottom up. And as I'm traveling to one side, you're zigzagging back and forth from the bottom to the top.
All right, Justin. Now I'm going to disagree with you on this one
Why is that?
because it also matters the direction of your fill. Now, Justin
It
typically is
does.
doing like what, 15 degrees here,
15, 20 degrees is usually
15,
where I keep
20
them. Yeah.
degrees. So his fills are running horizontally. In this case, it's going to work out fairly well because that's the same color as his fill. But in the middle element, I think the middle element is it the same color or a different color?
It's red.
It's red. So in the instance of the red fill, if it was going in the exact same direction as your global underlay, then that's going to pop out and you're going to end up seeing it.
Right. So let's do the other idea that you and I use a lot too. If it is a kind of a design that's not just all one color, I mean, the majority of this design is the navy blue. So the majority of the global underlay is going to be covered by the same color thread. Say like this was split into 4 different quadrants, and you have blue, gold, red, and white as your quadrants. And the typically the first color is what I use for the global underlay just to save a color change. But if it is a color that's going to be crossing many fill colors on top, and there's a potential where you have high contrasting colors, say like a navy blue global underlay with a white fill on top, it's definitely going to show through. So if you do that, what I tend to do is just make your global underlay the color of the hat, and
Yep.
that way the stitches are going to blend more into the background and not through your top stitches. So
Yep. All right. And Cindy's wondering what your final stitch count ended up being.
final stitch count is 13,000,
All right.
and the design that was supplied was 14,000. So
14,000.
it was
Okay.
a difference of about 500 stitches.
That you went down, including adding the global underlay.
Correct. So one of the things that I wanted to point out, if you were watching about a month ago, I think Jeff and I did a webinar with Wocom, and we were talking about the differences of between editing EMB files, um, how you have a lot more control over settings and elements being all kind of one piece as per digitized next to machine files. That when you open them, you're going to have a lot of different elements that are kind of broken apart depending on how the software reads it. You're not going to be able to just, kind of grab this fill and come over here and know that, oh, if I move it over here, the underlay goes with it. Because if you come back over here to the DST file, see how I just kind of grabbed it, and there's this travel or underlay stitch that I grabbed. But if I grab this fill, that underlay, let me hide the rest of the colors here. That underlay is being treated as its own entity. And then especially when you have fills that are kind of starting and stopping and breaking apart, that whole top portion is broken into 3 pieces there. So when that is the case, when I'm working with DST files and I want to start manipulating, especially start and stop points when it comes to fills, where I'm trying to get it to start at one point and end one point and not be broken up into pieces. Um, what I tend to do is, let me get rid of these. Or I can just do this. I can select by stitch type, and I'm going to grab the tatamis. And I want to go ahead and hide those. And if you notice, some of the underlay uh, disappeared as well when I hit those tatamis, because for whatever reason the software was opening this file, recognized sections of that underlay as an actual object, a tatami object. But I'm going to go ahead and delete all the underlay. I'm going to unhide that. I'm going to go in here and find those sections that it was acting as or reading as tatami stitches. So these are sections of the underlay, which leaves me with just the tatami stitches altogether. So one of the tools that I use a lot when I'm trying to manipulate sections of fills to kind of be all one entity is to kind of go in here, and the first thing you need to do is under your reshape tool where you can grab your nodes. I'm going to make sure that all those pieces are overlapping completely. So those two sections are.
So, Justin, before you do that third section, why don't you show them why you do that?
Yeah, I'm gonna show them right now. So, okay, you mean give an example of it not being?
Yeah.
There you go. So if you had a section that kind of was kind of wonky and not meeting each other, the tool I'm going to use is, I've kind of over exaggerated that kind of corner there. Is I'm going to select all those sections and I want it to basically weld together into one piece. So if you go to your shaping tools and you use weld, it now becomes all one piece, if you can see here in your color object list.
Yep. And if you go back into node edit, you can see that it's got those weird nodes drop down
Right.
the center.
Because there wasn't a complete overlap here, it actually is treating that as kind of a crack in that shape. So you want to really make sure, and there's a lot less editing involved if you just make sure that those sections are overlapped completely. And a lot of times too, these sections may not completely line up with each other. So I do that
And
first.
by completely, like we're talking, it may look like it's butted up on your screen, but then you zoom in really, really far and it's not quite. And
Right.
it's whether or not the software picks up, hey, he's trying to get these as one object or not.
Right. And it
So,
may look like it on screen, like Jeff's saying, and they may just be so very close together. So that may still leave some kind of weird trims in there, or once you sew it out, there may be that one line that's just not covering, that you can kind of see that gap in the fill.
when you weld it, you have this little pie shape going through it.
Right.
And you see a
So
random node in the center. Yep.
the fact that I overlapped them correctly on this is now all one piece. I can go and grab my end point and make it up on the top here, my start point down here. And now, since I basically turn this into one element that's a tatami fill, I can go in and now apply the standard underlay settings to that fill, because it's not broken up into many parts. I'm not worried about how it's traveling because I know that the endpoint is going to end up here.
So one of the things that I know a lot of people don't think about, I tend to a lot, is that when you go move an object from a DST based object to a object like Justin just did, and you delete all the underlay and all the little runs and stuff in there, you also delete the lock stitches because
Mm-hmm.
the software doesn't pick those up as lock stitches.
Right.
So you have to go back in and you have to make sure if that's an object that you're ending on that you put that lock stitch back in.
Correct. Yeah, if you're starting on it, you got to make sure that there's the tie-in stitch, because it's like Jeff said, if it recognizes that those beginning or ending stitches are some small stitches, or they're attached to that piece of the underlay that you deleted, then you're not going to have those tie-ins and those lock stitches. Really quick, Doug, if there's any change of score of the game, please post it.
Okay. So, Z-Fish, I believe this is Zant, Cindy King's son, late to the party, listening in Louisiana. Glad to meet Jeff in Dallas. It was nice meeting you too. And then Cindy says, would you still use another underlay even though you were using the global underlay?
I tend to, because I tend to make my global underlays not very dense. And especially if you are using a second color that's not the same color as your top stitching, even though there may not be high contrast. You still want that other underlay on the fill itself to kind of give it that support and that, make sure that your fill stitches are raised off the material.
Yeah. So how I think of it is the global underlay is there to secure the material to the hat
Mm-hmm.
and to stabilize movement. Your actual underlay that you're putting down before your stitches go down are for to help with your push and pull, to support the stitches underneath. So the global underlay is there for a slightly separate reason. Sometimes you can combine them if you plan it outright, but that takes a lot of thought, and my brain doesn't think that well this late at night.
All right. So let's see, where were we? Let me get rid of this shaping tool. All right, so we went through the global underlay, made sure that the outlines are done right after the fills to make sure your registration's okay. And like Jeff was saying, as far as I knew that the top fill that I just showed you how I manipulated is all within the needle staying down, and it doesn't need any tie-in stitches. I wasn't worried about the tie-in stitches because the travel stitch here went from the bottom section here straight to the top section and up there. Then it does the fills right, or the outlines right away. And I opted to do the two football players right after the outline, um, because the football players are so tight in the registration of these outlines. Again, I don't want this design sewing too much, going back and forth, possible any shifting of the hat at all. And then those outlines of those helmets, once they come back and sew, how close it is in contour to the satin border. I just wanted to make sure that these weren't going to look off at all. I try to tend to think about the things that your eyes are going to go to the most. Number one thing is going to be text. So anything you do with text, you got to make sure that you're real precise about, because that's the first thing your eyes go to. You start reading something. The other thing is high contrasting areas where you have elements like white on black, black on white, and where things are supposed to be fitting into a certain shape or outline or something like that. I tend to want to do those really close together for registration purposes, so you have really nice tight areas that line up together. So that's why I did the football players next. Came back down, did the football down here, saving a color change. Um, Came and did again registration purposes, trying to do those other outlines. They may not be right on top of that navy outline. There is some gap here. So there is a little bit of leeway if that outline is a little bit off. Your eye may not go directly to it, but it is still within the realm of the shape of that background. So I am doing it, as soon as possible after the football helmets were a little bit tighter registration. So I did those first, came back and did the red outlines. As well as it is saving another color sequence here. I mean, a color change, being that the fill of the banner is within the same color change. So I did save on color changes as well as those 500 stitches. I did save on color changes as well because of the resequencing. Also, because this bottom red outline does appear kind of tucked up underneath the banner, so I wanted to do those first and then come back with the fill of that banner. So again, saving the color changes. How many colors? Because this is ended up being 5 colors or color changes, and this one is 7. So it saved 2 color changes as well. Again, fill border right away. If you remember the original, it did the let's hide everything. It did the complete border on everything last. So not only all your fills that went down, you came inside and did all your elements inside. Besides this border text, it did the border last. So on a shirt, that may work out for you. I would still kind of tighten up the registration even on a shirt. But on a hat, I think you'd come back and you'd have areas where that fill is not meeting that outline properly, and you're going to have either that fill pulling away from the outline or it's going to be pushing out past the outline.
All right, and then Justin, once you get done through the text here, explaining what you're doing, I got questions.
Sure thing. Go ahead. Fire away.
Oh, I said after you get through the text. Fired. All right, so Barb joined us from Central Minnesota. Hello, Barb. Making sure. Doug says I'm redoing a design that was a DST dealing with converting manual stitches to run, and we'll look at the tie-in and tie-out settings. It's always a good catch.
So if you are converting from manual to running, the difference between manual stitches is a manual stitch is going to have a needle down anywhere that you click a node in that line. As the only time that it's going to have a needle down. So if you click once and you move over 3 millimeters, you're going to have a 3 millimeters wide stitch. If you move over 5 millimeters, it'll be 5 millimeters. You can't set settings like tie-ins and lock stitches on a manual stitch. So only get to apply where you apply those nodes. Running stitches, you can click to start point, end point, and then you can set the stitch length between those two, and you can set tie-in stitches and lock stitches at the end on a running stitch.
Yeah. Typically, when you convert any type of manual stitch to a run stitch, it's going to be a node every stitch point.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we got DJ Kev here. What size needle did you use for this design?
7511 sharp.
Yeah, I use 7511s. I don't think I've went to an 8012 in a really, really, really long time. Doug's got the score as of 5 minutes ago. Dodgers 2-1, bottom of the second.
Nice. Thank you, Doug.
And then Cindy says, did you get a chance to sew this out? Or
yeah, we actually ran the job already. They're on Pacific headwear hats, I believe. There's some really nice hats in here. I'm trying to see if I have a sample hat. I have a bunch of hats on a counter behind here.
I'll bug Justin to throw up a post in the Embroidery Nerd group.
There you go. I'm sure we have one because I did run a sample after I made the changes that I made just to make sure that it was going to run fine on a hat. So yeah, I'll definitely find it and do a follow up picture.
Awesome. All right, that was all my questions.
I should have had that. I'm sorry, Cindy.
That's okay. I'll let it slide. It's what? Almost 6 o'clock?
Yeah. So
yeah.
All right. So coming back again, registration purposes, the fill stitch and then the border and then came inside. And once, it's kind of established the majority of the stitches in this area is going to be your fill with a border, then come inside and do the text portion of it, running center out. Same with the top text. One other thing I did do is this fill was running perfectly vertical. Typically, I don't do that ever. I shouldn't say ever. There's always cases that I might need to do it. But on a hat, I would avoid this. Main reason being your seam is a vertical gap. So if you have vertical stitches falling into that seam, there's a good chance in this area that those stitches are going to fall right into that seam and it's going to be very apparent. You're going to have some issues where you're kind of losing the embroidery or it's going to cause a gap in that fill. So I did change.
You went with what, like 70 degree?
Yeah. So now when you do have two fills that are overlapping, even though I do have a border around this, I kind of had these things that you when you're digitizing and you kind of have these rules of a rule of thumb that you typically do when you have two fills overlapping. You do always want to overlap them just a bit to make sure that when those fills are pulling, it doesn't leave a gap. Um, but even though there is a satin border on these, you also want to make sure that fills always have a different angle. If you go the same angle and they are two different colors, where those two fills fall on top of each other, they're going to have that zipper effect where they're going to start bleeding together since the stitch angles are exactly at the same angle. Um, so even though the technically this border here is going to hide all that, um, I just try to teach myself to always do these type of things, so it's kind of second nature. So border or not, those two fills would work together and not have the zipper effect and not have the issues of them pulling. So not only are you going to have the overlap that I did of these two fills, um, yeah, the edge of that fill kind of goes up underneath there, but you also have them at different angles. So the background fills, going from the bottom right to the top left, when the banner fill is going from the bottom left to the top right. So and then doing the lettering last, it's kind of one of those things where the bulk of your designs ran. Your hat's going to be pretty much stabilized. It's not going anywhere from there. You have your fills, you have your outlines, you have a global underlay. The structure of the whole shape is done. So you're not going to have that much variance at that point where you're going to have some shifting to it. Um, if you were running this on, say, a really unconstructed hat, floppy dad hat or something like that, I might approach this a little bit differently where I break it up even more. I may do the bottom section altogether, so I'm doing the bottom fill, bottom outline, the interior stuff, still doing the global underlay to establish that base. Then I'd come back and do everything in the top section to make sure that the registration of everything in the top section is going to line up. But the structured hats that we were working on, I knew it wouldn't be an issue to kind of break it up as much as I did there. So,
all right, awesome.
And that is it.
All right, so I'm gonna bring up Doug's asking the questions here. He says, any tips for an outline in black with white fill doing ghosts?
Pick a fill angle that gives you the least amount of, how should I say this?
Zipperage.
A least amount of like, if you have an outline where a lot of it's going, let's just give it right angles. A lot of the outlines are going up and down, say. So the outside of your satins are going to be to the interior, and they're going to be at a 90-degree angle. Your satins are sewing at 90 degrees. Or your stitches are laying at 90 degrees. So of course you wouldn't want to do your fill at 90 degrees, because the majority of the outline, you're going to have a bunch of area that shows zipper effect. So try to choose a fill angle that's going to give you the least amount of satin stitches that are going to fall in the same angle. If you're not running it on hats, another thing to do is you can use on that border, you're going to want to use an edge walk that's going to help you kind of stabilize the outsides of that satin. I say not on hats because typically you don't want to use edge walks on hats, because they tend to stick out outside of that satin because of the curvature of the hat. A little bit more density of your satin border as well can help. Is there anything else you could think of, Jeff?
Well, so the one thing that I'll do that's actually different than what Justin does is I will run a manual run stitch as an interior edge run before I lay down the fill.
So it actually becomes a edge run for your satin when it sews on top.
Yep, but that depends on the fill size. But it's something like that's if I know that the border is going to come right down after it, because you got to think of it, right? When your fill comes down, it starts to pull in. So the longer you leave that without throwing a satin on it, the bigger chance you're going to have actually missing that.
Right. Another thing too, You don't want to do too extreme because you can kind of see this when it sews out. But if you do have say like you have a small area that just may be one problem area that you don't like the zipper effect on how that satin sent because it's hitting in the same angle as your fill. You could also change the angle of your satin stitches. So instead of them being kind of perfectly parallel or perpendicular to the edges of your satin, turn
Oh,
them.
it's a running stitch outline.
Oh, it's a running stitch outline.
That changes things a little bit.
Well, we're answering questions we're not even getting asked.
Oh, I'm gonna grab this question or it's a statement really. From Rick Parsley. Today's hat backings are a problem cutting out and separating, leaving holes in the backing and then dragging on the needle plate edges. I believe it.
I believe it too.
Um,
That's the lesson in making sure that you do use a quality backing.
yeah, but I've seen it where it has separated. I guess it just depends on how dense. Like with puff too, you see that a lot
Right.
that the backing gets cut out.
And there's
So
times where, depending on the hat, we may use two pieces of backing too.
yeah, but I believe it.
Running stitch outline. If you have to use a running stitch outline and the elements aren't that teeny tiny little elements, you may want to go with a triple run. It's going to give you a little bit thicker line that's going to cover more areas to make sure
Or there's
any.
that like back stitch that throws. It's like a
Yeah,
triple run, but it throws it just a little bit wider.
yeah. There's the triple run, and there's also what's it called, back stitch. Well, there you go. You just said that.
I get 2 points for the day.
The back stitch is kind of where a triple run is going to, run. What is it? Two forward, one back, two forward, one back, and it's on top of each other. It's going to stay in the
Mm-hmm.
same line. The back stitch, it kind of butts out at an angle and then comes back straight. So it's kind of like a really really sharp zigzag,
Yeah,
and
and
it
you
gives
can add a repeat to it.
yeah, you can add repeats, and you can even change the angle so it's opened up a little bit more. Um,
Yeah, but
but
then at that point, you could probably transition to a set.
right, but that's a good tool where you don't need to use two passes on something. It one pass is usually thick enough where you're gonna get a nice bold outline that's not a satin. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I posted that big dragon design I did yet, but the majority of the outline, I'd use that back stitch because not only does it give you kind of a nice big bold line just in one pass, but if you're really looking at it, it kind of gives the setting I was using of the angle of it, it kind of gave a jagged looking edge, and it being a dragon, I kind of wanted that look. So
It worked for that
yeah, it worked for
application.
that. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, that brings us pretty close to the hour, which is surprising because I didn't think we were going to come that close to an hour, Justin.
No.
But thank you guys for showing up with the questions. It's always helpful, and we do this so that you guys can learn and chime in, and we can all learn together. So we're happy that you guys were able to join us. Announcements, any big things coming up? All I can think of is Long Beach.
Long Beach in January. So once we get through the holidays, uh, people that are teaching unfortunately have to work through the holidays trying to get the stuff prepped for the show. But yeah, January. We do have something coming up. I don't want to say too much because I don't know how much I can say. But check us
And he probably needs to tell Jeff about it.
in in November. Just kind of watch out for Wilcom Stitch Fest. We might be doing a little something with them. So just watch out in November sometime, and you can check that out
Next month.
next month.
All right. Awesome. Well, that was a great session, Justin. I'd like to thank everybody for hanging out with us. I'll go ahead and close it out. I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. We got Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios, and we're both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night, everybody.